See, ours at the county are blue when they're on, so red means you're off. I also note that, Commissioner Gruters would probably attest to this, we usually take a lot of grief at the county because our meetings are 8:30 in the morning, and people say, well, we don't have an opportunity to come in and watch our government at work. So we'll stick at 8:30 if that's okay with you.
Good. It's good.
So lots of things going on at the county, and I'll just kind of review a couple of these items, and then if you have questions, feel free to shoot, and I'll see what I can give you by way of effective answers. One of the things that we're working on now is appointments to our boards and commissions. The county is, as you probably know, is essentially a service provider. We manage and control services across the county and do that with a lot of committees, authorities, commissions, and boards, whether it's the pension board, road commissions, airport authority, community mental health, and so on. There's at least 30 of those different agencies out there and boards that we have to staff, and it is it's a huge challenge. I know you have boards as well that you have to fill, but figure if you have 30 or 35 of these, and you've got somewhere between 5 and sometimes 15 or so staff or people on these. It's hard to do that. So I'm going to start by imploring you, when you have people, highly qualified people that you haven't placed on your boards, just give me a call and we'll find a place to plug them in. If they're interested in serving your government, we have a spot for them. So, or if you talk around, because this is always a big challenge for us. We are working on our legislative priorities. In fact, tomorrow morning at our legislative meeting, we expect that we'll have the preliminary draft of that prepared. This is identifying those issues that we think are most important for addressing to our legislators, our state legislators this round, and then our federal legislators later on in the year. And this is important because we spend a lot of energy in trying to identify with our legislators what are some of those key issues that we think Lansing has to take special attention to. Those of you that work in Lansing probably hear from us more often than you want or need. But we have a sense that this is sort of where Lansing's policies and legislation really comes to bear at the county level, because we're frequently asked to implement it. And where it works, that's great. We like to pass through that it's working. Where it's not working quite so well, we like to pass that information back as well. So this is an important part of what we do. Behavioral health. You probably heard me talk about behavioral health, so you're sick of hearing it. But this is a huge issue in this community, in a lot of communities. You know, we're facing increasing levels of opioid addiction and all of the challenges that creates in our communities. We have increasing substance use disorder reported across the county. Suicide continues to be a growing concern in the community, and just the overall level of behavioral health interaction with our police agencies, with our health departments, with our hospitals. All of that puts an incredible amount of challenge and burden and cost on our system. So we have worked hard at identifying better mechanisms for doing that. Right now, one of the initiatives that we're working on specifically is to identify a crisis center campus method of dealing with that. We have been studying that for about 2 years now, looking for a good model that we can identify and recommend. We're now trying to move that into administration at the county to take on and effectively implement it, and looking forward to maybe in the next year to start actually seeing some concrete development of a new campus. Early childhood programming. You might recall that last year the voters approved an early childhood dedicated millage. This is programming to be monitored, managed by the county for purposes of addressing some early childhood intervention programs. This is going to be run similar to what we do with the senior millage. If you're familiar with what we do with the dedicated funds for seniors, we have a special committee that's responsible, made up of some commissioners, public individuals from the public as well as some professionally oriented folks. That committee makes decisions on how to spend that money every year, finding out what's the most effective programs to do that with. That's the model that we're using here, but we haven't done it before. We're just creating it, but so we have ways to go in doing that. But this year is supposed to be the first year of operation, so hopefully before we get too much further into the year, you begin to see some of these programs, some of these funds being able to actually be used. So everybody wants to talk about water as well, and it is a big challenge across the state. It's a challenge for us here in the county, PFAS particularly, one of the most recent challenges. We have spent a significant amount of money at the county, principally looking at how to identify, how to respond to those concerns about PFAS across the county. We don't have either the mechanisms and we don't have the funds to solve it. That is, this is going to take a substantial amount of money. So what our efforts are doing right now is principally identifying where is it, what's the nature of it, and then identifying at the state level, how are we going to address that? How much do we need to have to address it? Is it going to come from the state? Is it going to come from the federal government? Is it going to come from both? But actually addressing and resolving that is going to have to be funding that comes from a state level at a minimum. But in the meantime, we do our best to continue to watch that. I was just talking to the mayor beforehand that we think PFAS is something out of the past, and we don't deal with it anymore. But the fact is, PFAS is still a chemical utilized even at the airport. We use PFAS chemicals for spraying. I think it's de-icing spraying, and it's required by federal regulation. We continue to use it. So it's still being used, it's still out there, and we still try to contain it and keep it from getting into the environment, but it is still there. Another contamination that we have looked at hard is lead contamination. Some of you may have followed up the report that the county had generated a year or so ago that identified that in this county we have higher levels of lead poisoning in some of our population than they do in Flint. In fact, some of the highest levels anywhere in the state. Our 45907, I think, is the district that has incredibly high levels, and it's very pervasive, and it's not water-based, it's paint-based. And the significance of that is it is much more difficult to eliminate paint-based lead than it is water-based lead. You simply have to stop the water source from generating or producing through the lead pipes in order to get at that. It's on the houses, it's in the houses. Lots of times it's in the ground because the houses were scraped. That paint then disseminated into the ground, and once it's in the ground, it stays there until you either dig it all out or effectively cover it. So the projected costs of abating some of these houses is a minimum $45,000 or $40,000 per house, so it's a substantial cost. Again, it's something that we know is there. We need to address it. We need to find a mechanism of dealing with it. But the cost is so prohibitive that the county is simply not going to be in a position to do that. This is a matter of finding the funding mechanisms to divert from the state or the federal government to do that. We have long urged that as much money as put into Flint with their levels, and it should go, they need to have that addressed. If we would get even a fraction of what they get for their lead problems, we could do a lot to solve our issues. So give us 50%. Maybe we can do that or start with that. We don't have that done yet, by the way, but we're still looking. Land bank, some of you may have tracked the land bank. The certification of the land bank was rescinded by the county last December, and we are now in the process of utilizing what was extended to be a one-year unwind period. That purpose of giving it a 1 year was to utilize whatever mechanisms they might have to reconstitute themselves if they so choose. I do not know yet what they intend to do. Some of the concepts that had been discussed was a possibility of having them either reformulate as a 501c3 and pursue some of the agendas that they wish to pursue as a separate nonprofit agency. Some had suggested that they reconstitute as a branch land bank with the city of Grand Rapids, where the bulk of their work is done. I know that Walker may have done 1 or 2 projects with them over the years. I'm not sure how many, but So at this point, that is going to take a long tail for that to unwind, and the reason is we just don't want it to cause any damage to what programming they are doing. There's not uniform agreement on this issue. City of Grand Rapids has a different perspective on what should happen here than we did, but it was our land bank, not theirs, so it was ours to decide what to do with. Waste, management of the waste system. This is a huge challenge, and it's one that affects all of us. It certainly affects the cities, including the city of Walker. How we are going to manage our waste stream over the course of the coming years. You probably know that we've made a decision at the county that we would eliminate the utilization of a landfill by 2030. And to get there requires us to make some significant changes in how we manage that waste stream. We basically process the waste in a number of ways. One of them is to find out what can be recycled and run it through the recycling center. We also run what waste, particularly the waste that goes through the 6 cities, through the waste to energy facility. Some of the waste is specialized waste that gets transferred up to the northern processing facility and then finally into the landfill. What we would like to do with that is to identify and implement an effective business park that would implement businesses that are capable of mining that waste stream and finding what's actually restorable, recoverable, and utilized out of that waste stream, so that we've pulled as much as we can out of that before it actually goes to the final processing. And the hope is that it can then lead us to the point where we don't need landfill anymore. I will confess I don't quite understand all the equation, how it's going to get there yet. I think that we're still going to have to be innovative and find some ways of doing that. We may at the end of this process have to begin to look at whether or not we have regulations relative to what goes into the waste stream. That's going to be a political challenge for the county to deal with. I don't know that we'll get there. But in the meantime, it's an aggressive agenda to try to process this as effectively as possible. Some great ideas. They're unique ideas on how to deal with this business park. At the same time, we'll have to continue to monitor how do we equitably manage that between the cities and the counties and so on. Again, you understand that as one of the 6 cities, you're involved in at least the advisory committee in responding to that waste to energy facility. And how we set that up, and we'll have to continue to look at that. No questions on that one? Serious?
I'll take some.
I had to pick one here sooner or later.
Well, I'd go back to PFAS, but your waste to energy, you know, I've went to these meetings and you've got money people from Wyoming, different municipalities that are at these meetings, and they're trying to follow the money trail, and it seems like I left there thinking, this reminds me of our ice and fitness, where the people running it are doing this and that, you really can't get your arms around it, you can't get your hands on it, but you know, and they talk about all the plastic being in with the trash, and the plastic burning in the incinerator, raising the heat. And when it gets to a certain temperature or above, then it's not good for the steam and everything. And it's like, I sit back and look and I wonder, why wouldn't we do something, you know, people to recycle pay extra? And so maybe, you know, you raise the trash, but make the recycle free. Would you get more people involved in that to try to help, you know, make the incinerator more efficient?
Well, I don't doubt that it's an incredibly difficult balance to achieve in this environment between regulating the cost that the public pays in order to have their waste streams taken away, what we're able to recover in recyclable costs, which goes up and down, very down now, as you know. What we're able to get on the waste to energy on the sale of our energy, which is also way down at this point, and how we can more effectively divide these streams to their usable components. That's one of the agendas that I understand that DAR is looking at is finding a mechanism and maybe a new process that will sort that stuff out before it goes into the waste to energy, so that we can get those highly those components of the waste stream that burn too hot for the facility, pull them out some way. So I think that is in the works, to find a way of doing that and get that to where it needs to be, which is principally to the recycling. But those are tough challenges. Where are we going to go when it comes to the energy buyback agreement? Are we going to be able to have effective prices? Because if we don't get the price that we need on the buyback of the energy, the cost has to shift over to the fees, right? It's the dumping fees. And that adds the cost to everybody. If we can get better pricing out of the recycling, great. But at what point is the price of the recycling purchase less than the cost of processing it? And then we have to charge more there. If we can get a business park that is effective and cost effective for these businesses, that would be great. And that helps take some of that cost out of it. It's almost as complicated as mental health.
But then your PFAS and your lead, some things, I guess, will probably never go away. You take your grandkids to go to McDonald's or something and get them food there. Some of the wrappers and everything that the food's in, that you're getting PFAS from it. So to limit it to just the water, or, anyone, there's a point where we got to look backwards, I guess, and say, well, we used to use wax paper or whatever to,
paper straws.
Yeah.
And different things. So,
well, that's part of the reality, is that most of the PFAS that's out there contaminating was put there legally. So at the time it was disseminated in our environment, it was not done illegally. These are not people that were dumping stuff in the back door because they shouldn't have been. It was legal. And I'm told that there's probably very few places you can go in this world that there isn't PFAS. There's probably PFAS all around us at this point at some level. And until the state or federal government comes in and determines what is the new acceptable standard or level at which we declare it to be contaminated, it's very difficult for the state legislature, for example, to say, all right, we'll provide funds to do that or to resolve it or to tap in or hook up for water supply. If you have levels of what? Well, what is that level? I don't know. The level of 70 parts per trillion we know is not good, but the state hasn't set one yet. And frankly, the federal government probably ought to be the one to set that, and they haven't set it yet.
nobody wants to touch it.
I don't know, maybe the city can set one. Is that?
I just hope they don't decide to regulate when you can use a public boat launch and when you can't. That you can't go fishing at 6 in the morning, you gotta wait till 8, but it's not prime time, so.
That was written incorrect.
Thank you.
I love it when that's a state issue that you.
There you go. Well, you can pass it along. We're not happy with it, some of us.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
There's a lot more going on. I can keep talking, but
I think, Stan, one of the things you touched on, the lead exposure piece, and the cost of that, and it is obviously very significant, and 49507 is the, I think statistically, one of the most challenging zip codes, not just in the state, but in the Midwest. What are there any hopes for, I realize it's outside of our city, but nonetheless, it's something that we all are, concerned about, and the especially given the proportionate amount of homes that actually have it there. Is there any hope on the horizon of some type of a federal and or state funding program that might help that?
well, there are federal programs out there now, and our county does have some grants, and the city of Grand Rapids has some grants to continue to do lead either containment, most of it's containment, as opposed to full abatement. because the cost of abating is so prohibitive. So if you can effectively contain it for 5,000, or you do a complete abatement for 45,000, you can spread your dollars that much quicker or that much farther. So there are those programs, and we are administering some of those, but they're a little trickle compared to the challenge of what we actually have out there. So it really is it's a question of priorities. It didn't make it in the campaign rhetoric that I heard. I heard a lot about fixing the D roads, but I didn't hear anything about getting rid of lead-based paint out of Grand Rapids. But so it's a matter of finding the political will to do that.
Good, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions?
Stan, don't stay away so long.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should come back more regularly and talk. So I will. Whenever Dale says be here, I will be here.
I do have one question for Stan. I know you guys are in the process of your first ever strategic plan, or first one in a while. Where are you in that process, and do you see anything as an outshoot from that that's new and innovative, or is it too soon to tell?
Yes, we are, and it is too early, and it is too soon to tell. And you want more? So, no, that's a good point. We are in the process of doing that. Strategic planning from a public entity's perspective is a little bit of an unusual beast, at least in my experience, because it's all done in the public, and all your elected officials are a little bit careful. There's a lot of posturing. At this point, we are getting to a point of preparing some documentation that would set forth a new a vision statement, mission statement, statement of values, the traditional documentation you would get out of the strategic plan. I don't anticipate that at the end of the day we're likely to walk away saying that's what we are. I mean, it's important stuff to do. Don't get me wrong. I think it is important to do. I think it's important for us to be able to periodically, and you say we haven't done, I think we did it 10 years ago. Maybe, Melanie, you know better than I do, but it's been a while since the county's engaged in that process. So I think it's important that we do get it, and we'll do that sort of thinking. It may be valuable actually for the county as an elected group to do that more regularly, maybe not revise our vision statement or mission statement, but just sit back there and say, given what we want to do with respect to serving our constituents, you know, what are some of those key things that we need to look at doing? So I would say that we'll probably have that maybe by the state of the county address in May, too. Melanie said she'd type it up for us, so I think it's going to be all set.
All right. Anything else, commissioners?
That's great information. Thanks, Dan.
Well, as I say, if there's anything else, particularly if there's a particular issue that you want me to dig in a little more deeply before I come here, I can do that. I'll report. I know that you do have a lot of interest in the waste to energy facility. We talked about maybe scheduling a walkthrough for folks to go through and look at that, as well as the recycling center. But certainly the waste to energy, where the cities are involved in producing, generating, sending all your waste, to see what you do with it, where it goes, and if you want it back when we're done with it.
Do you meet tomorrow morning?
I didn't mean tomorrow morning, but or you say, do we meet tomorrow morning? Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah, 8:30.
So
Open
you're
to
selling the
public.
road commission?
Pardon me?
You're selling the road commission building?
Am I on the road commission?
Oh, did you?
Are you selling the road commission building? Is that the board of
yes.
commissions, or is that the road commission?
That will be a road commission call initially, but they've already made the decision to sell. Now, whether or not they're going to accept the offer, I don't know.
Okay. That's what I was curious.
My understanding is they had one offer, and they went out for an RFP. Still talking. So, but to convert it from, and it's not the best use of riverfront property, so it made sense.
Good. Stan,
All right.
thank you as always.
Yep.
Great detail, and thanks for always advocating for
Thank you
the
for
west
it.
Uh,
side here.
Thank you for what you guys do.
Thanks, Dan. Tell Cindy we said hi.
I will.
Yes.
She's enjoying herself.
She might be watching it on TV right now.
Oh, I'm sure she is. Mesmerized. Just wait for it.
Thanks, Stan. All right, we are spot on at 7 o'clock, so we will call the regular commission meeting to order. Commissioner Gilbert, if you would lead us in the invocation, please.
Would be happy to. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for being here with us tonight as we gather to do good work on behalf of the people of the city of Walker. We thank you for the beautiful weather and the sunshine and the signs that spring is coming. We ask that you offer us the guidance to do what is best for our community and allow us to continue to build a brighter future for all those whom we are here to represent. Lord, we ask you to protect all those who work so hard to serve and protect us, from our first responders to our military. And Lord, we thank you for all that you do to allow us to be here and serve our community. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I'd like to ask everyone to rise and please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if I could, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Kent,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Present.
Commissioner DeShane,
Present.
Commissioner Glanville, present, Commissioner Howland,
Present.
and Commissioner Gruters. Present. Thank you.
Outstanding, full house tonight. I'd look for an approval of the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Commissioner DeShane, a second from Commissioner Glanville. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign, motion passed. Seeing how we have no public, there will be no public comment on the agenda items. Darrell, we'll jump over to you. Reports from the city manager, I believe on the abatement services agreement.
Yep, I'm going to hand that over to Frankie, who's working on this through CDD,
Okay.
so.
Good evening. You folks have the proposed consultant services contract for property maintenance and abatement services. This went through the public bidding process. It actually went through twice. First bid, we didn't get any responses, and then second bid, we received one bid response from Just Right Construction. This is a group who we've worked with for the past few years. If you look at the contract itself, it kind of explains the process and also what's covered under the contract. So at the bottom of page 1, under subsection 3, there's a bulleted list that shows what Just Right Construction does for the city and is proposed to do again, which is junk, rubbish, refuse, mowing lawns, trimming, and removal of snow from sidewalks. So, it may seem like a fairly minor contract, but it's the quality of life issues that our community development department responds to. Neighbors call with issues, and we get those issues taken care of, either through compliance. The people who have issues either take care of it themselves, or we have Just Right Construction go out and take care of the issue, and then the costs are put on their tax bill. So this is one of those contracts that's pretty important for the city, and I'm more than willing to go through the contract and look at page by page if you want to do that. But this is the same contract as we've been dealing with. The only change that I made were the dates. Otherwise, it's what we've been flying with. So this would be a one-year contract, and I think there is a contract expiration on March 25th, 2020. So this would get us through the next year. Other than that, it's something that went through the official bidding process, and we've been pretty comfortable with Just Right Construction. We've asked them to itemize their bills, and they've been responsive to that as well, just so we can keep a handle on cost. The numbers of issues in the wintertime, this past winter, it wasn't too bad. Most of the sidewalks that we had to have cleared were on Alpine Avenue, and we consider those to be high priority sidewalks, and those can be difficult by the time they get packed in with ice and what have you. But during the summer, it's grass and junk, and we'll average 6 to 7 a month. It's a peak and valley cycle. But it's mostly summer and winter operations. So we would ask for your support for this contract, and if that is granted, we'll follow through with Just Right, and they will be back as our abatement provider.
Okay. Commissioner Kent, I see you.
I would just, based on positive comments from staff, that I'd make a motion that we accept this contract with Just Right Construction.
We have a motion from Commissioner Kent. Any other discussion from the commissioners? Questions, comments?
Support.
We have a motion from Commissioner Kent, support from Commissioner Gilbert. Any further discussion on it? Going once, going twice. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I think the nice thing with them, that what sticks out with me is we've had a good track record with them, but normally when we're calling them, we need it taken care of like right now, and it continually gets done. So I appreciate the work that they do and the city oversight as well in that. So underneath the consent agenda, we have expenditures in the amount of $630,177.89. I'll entertain a motion to approve the expenditures.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
We have a motion,
I'll support.
and we have support. We have a motion from Commissioner Holland, support from Commissioner Gruters. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Next on the list is ordinance. This is the second reading of ordinance property rezone 19-511 to amend zoning of 3284 Mile Road in Section 5. Just a refresher on this. This is the North Regis project, and we're rezoning this from agricultural and industrial park to industrial plan unit development. Any questions or discussion on this? This is our second reading. All right. I'll entertain a motion then for approval of said reading.
I'll make motion.
I'll support.
Have a motion from Commissioner Gilbert, support from Commissioner Holland. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Rolling through. Any other public comment? Anybody, please join us. All right. Commissioner, City Manager comments. We'll start with our clerk to the right and work our way left.
You will be on vacation starting tomorrow for 2 weeks. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Enjoy that grandbaby. Mr. Gilbert?
My turn. So I would say that we had an incredibly productive ordinance committee meeting. I'm sorry for being late, having a lot of car trouble these days, I guess. Again, we covered a lot of ground, specifically with our sandwich boards and the sign ordinance for our Standale downtown district, and we had some business owners in, which was really helpful for us, giving us some context on how it impacts them, and we're able to kind of finesse some of the wording to make sure that we're kind of headed in the same direction. And the other part, the food trucks, I think that's going to be a longer discussion, but we're trending well on that and continuing to move closer to an ordinance. The other thing that's coming through there that was pretty notable was the trees. So tree preservation. We had some clearing on some sites without any type of plans proposed that were firm. So I guess we just want to kind of have our hands around that and be able to better regulate it and make sure that we're managing these properties diligently and the impacts that they have on other sites. But other than that, we did have a really good master planning exercise last week with the Planning Commission. We hit a couple pretty important parts of our city, 2 of our sub-plan areas. A lot of good ideas are now on the board, and I think our staff is moving ahead, trying to move towards a couple of submissions and adoption of those plans moving forward.
Awesome. Good, thank you.
Mayor, Carrie, may
Yes.
I add to that? We did talk, we ran out of time, so we do need to get on the schedule, and I know we're going to do some finance meetings soon, so if there's any other days other than Mondays, because I know a lot of our commission works, so I don't know if we could do morning or if we could do 3 or 4 o'clock start time, so we can get the ordinance meetings continuing, basically the next few weeks. So we need to kind of wrap our heads around all the schedules of the meetings that are going to be coming up.
Good question. I would ask our chair of the ordinance committee. You use Doodle?
Yep, absolutely I do.
But you're going to be on vacation, and you're going to be on vacation.
You're right.
maybe if you can work with Jessica on that, and let's get a date. My ask of the ordinance committee, just a response back in the next 24, 48 hours max, and let's get that on the schedule, so we're not losing any traction with it. Yeah, it sounds like it's a very productive meeting.
Yeah, but we ran out of time on hitting all the items, so.
Okay, all good.
Yep.
All right, so you've got that then. All right, anything else?
Oh, yeah. I went to DC for the American Public Transit Association's conference. We were able to learn a lot about transit, and I went with the Rapid CEO, Andrew Johnson. Both of us sat in on a lot of meetings, a lot of committees, a lot of productive talks about different transit agencies and how they're operating. And I will tell you, we are so blessed with the way that the BRT line, the Laker line, has gone thus far. Pretty much without a hitch. All our partners have come to the table and been really receptive. I talked to, I believe, 3 other agencies that are getting new BRT lines in different states, and they are really going through it right now. It's like at every turn, everybody else is hitting just roadblock after roadblock, whether it be the community, the businesses, and a lot of that is the context of the routes that they're laying out. They're going through a lot more challenging thoroughfares. A lot of them are cutting through city centers and things like that, and those are very different challenges than what we're facing. But I mean, just the way that all of our partners have come together and worked on this project, I think we should be really grateful for that. And I think what BRT can do for a pretty important district for us, assuming we're able to capitalize on that with the way that we continue to develop in Standale. So again, a really exciting project for us in Walker through the Rapid. And Andrew and I obviously had a lot of additional discussions on the types of service that we would like to see in Walker during that time. So really exciting stuff, a lot learned, and really productive.
Fantastic, good return on the time investment as well. I think with the exposure for Walker, that's never a bad thing, but I think also to the education of some newer best practices and ideas that might be able to help us as a governing body. So good to hear. All right, thank you much. Commissioner Glanville?
Yeah, so I was at the CapCon this past week with a number of other representatives here from Walker, so that was exciting. And I just want to say, I think it's fantastic that there's money in the budget to help us all stay educated and informed, not only at a municipal level, but then also interacting with our state representatives. And so that was great. I want to say congratulations again to Commissioner Howland on her award. So that was exciting, and it was also exciting to see Rob Verheulen receive his Lifetime Achievement recognition with the MML. So it really says a lot about Walker, and our involvement, not just at the local level, but again at the state. Some big takeaways for me. I was in one session where we really talked about creating a brand for your city, and so that got Commissioner Gruters and I talking a little bit about what is Walker. So we had some good conversation around that. And then the breakdown on the state budget that we had from Governor Whitmer was really informative as well. It was helpful to see that, the proposed gas tax is more than just about the roads. It's about equalizing funding in a number of areas, not least of which a little bit of nod towards revenue sharing so that we might get a little bit back as a city. So looking at how all that's going to take shape, it was just very productive and positive experience to be networking with so many different people. And then this weekend, on Saturday, I was at the West Michigan Trails and Greenways Coalition. They had their first Friends Group Summit. And so I was there representing, of course, Standale Trail Group. And it was really exciting also in terms of what they're trying to do at that level is really pull us all together as like a regional network for mobility. And so we're talking about wayfinding and placemaking and how we do that with trails and how that connects to all the other trail groups around us. And so I met some people from Kent County Parks and Rec, some people from Prime Newhoff were there. We talked about the tunnel and the Laker line and what that might look like for us going forward in terms of trail, promoting the trail and the leverage we can get out of that, combining those two pieces. I also learned a little bit about the benefits, the financial and business benefits, and I'm curious to follow up with the DDA and know if they've done any research. I don't know. I should probably talk to Frank or Daryl about that, if we've looked at the economic impact of having a trail, how that's benefited our businesses, or how it could. And I got quite a bit of data on that. And then just to wrap that up, I want to just say, I'm really grateful for our engineering department. They are very well known within this area. They're very proactive in making Walker a community with, that has mobility choices and is looking at positive ways to connect transportation, not just for recreation, but also for business, as an option for commuting and things like that. They're very engaged in that conversation and the thoughtfulness around that when we're actually doing planning. So quite a few people, everybody I talked to, knew our engineering department and mentioned that. So I think that's real positive for them, and I appreciate their work.
Awesome.
That's all I got.
Good. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gruters?
I think you did a great job explaining everything from CapCon, and we had a great session. It was probably 3 hours on Tuesday morning, and really brainstormed a lot and came up with a lot of good ideas, I think, and it was very worthwhile. It was very encouraging. We went to a luncheon. There's an initiative called 1650, and that was reassuring, or I was proud of Walker, because what the 1650 program is trying to do is get more women involved. 50% of our population is women, and only 16% of our leadership in government is female. And so they're really just encouraging and educating up-and-comers that might be able to work into leadership positions. And it was just really positive and really encouraging. I think that, they really emphasize encouraging each other as women, and be the support system and be there for each other. And I just thought that was really good.
All right. Good stuff then.
Yeah.
All right, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Holland?
Well, let's see. Some of the classes that I attended were biases, an update on marijuana, and no, I didn't bring back any samples. Diversity and inclusion, as well as, what was the other one? I'm drawing a blank on that one, so I'll come back to it. The highlight for me was seeing Commissioners Glanville and Gruters so involved with the classes that were going on. And because that's how I was when I first started, so. Not that I've changed, but it is good to see that you want to get more involved. I also attended the Ordinance Committee, and what went on there today was actually very, very good. The one thing that I did take away, we had business owners in there, and they had talked about starting a networking group of businesses. Now, I was thinking how we could get our Community Relations Committee involved to get that going and keep it going, so.
Love it.
So I'll get on that once we have our meeting. We're having our first meeting April 11th at 6 p.m. here. If anybody wants to come, it's going to be our first meeting. Getting to know everybody that is now on the Community Relations Board, our new members, and also giving them the chair so that they can plan some of the events that we have coming up, not just the one that normally happened every year, but to get more involved with what's happening in the city and how they can get more involved. Another highlight was when I got my governance award. It takes a lot of time and effort to do this, but it's definitely well worth it. The other thing I wanted to mention is I've had some of my constituents coming to me already about 510 Cummings. It's an apartment complex that they want to build on Cummings right across from single-family homes. They're all not happy. They will all be there. They're passing out flyers in the neighborhoods to get everybody to come. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, Frank. I know, and the mayor, that it might be good for you to be especially at that meeting for the Planning Commission. I think that's next week?
No, it's in April 17th.
The 17th? Okay. Yeah, I told him we would definitely be there. And that's all I've got.
Great, thank you. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Commissioner DeShane?
Yeah, congratulations, Sandra. It's good stuff. I was also going to bring up that 510 coming, so I'm glad you did. In regards to the master plan 2040 and the hiring of McKenna, I reached out to a few references. I'm still waiting for Coopersville and Livonia to reply, but Tracy Miller, the Director of Community Development in Ingham County, stated that they used McKenna for their realized Cedar Corridor plan, and they did an excellent job, and they were very satisfied. No red flags, so that was good. I also had the pleasure of attending last week's strategy planning for Master Plan 2040 Subplan number 2 and 6 with our Youth Commission, and it was great content. Thank you, Frank and Dan and Scott and everybody in the team that put that together. There was great community interaction, a lot of discussion regarding strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats for future growth. Our Walker Youth Commission was a little bit shy, but they really got a good vision as to what all goes into planning the future of Walker. And then after the planning meeting, we had an opportunity to listen to Commissioner Gilbert talk about his role as a commissioner and being a liaison for the Planning Commission. And they had a lot of good questions for Steve, and they enjoyed learning about his role of the city of Walker and learning about his job in Lansing. It was just really good stuff. And Steve, thank you for spending the time with the youth. They really enjoyed it. In fact, I've had a couple of the youth commissioners say they really like the way that we're doing the youth commission this year, having more interaction with department heads, and just really want to get them involved even in the strategy planning for the Master Plan 2040. I think that would be good. I like hearing all the comments from everybody who went to the conference and the Washington in comparison of what a trailblazer Walker is. It's really nice to know that we have a city that is well ahead of every other city that surrounds us. Empowerment of women is always a good thing, especially for our next generation of young women. So that's really cool that you guys had some Capcom seminars on that. And I too attended the tail end of the Ordinance, and there's a lot of good conversations that's coming up. So that's it.
Awesome, good, thank you. Commissioner Kent?
I didn't know I was missing a speaking engagement with Commissioner Gilbert. I could have been there.
You're welcome anytime.
He was autographing copies of his book.
You should have.
Yeah, the Planning Commission, I was happy to see, even if the Youth Commission didn't have a lot of input, I think they seen something that maybe they weren't, when you can throw something at the wall, is it going to stick or isn't it? But it went on the board. And I think that, to me, that's a good thing for these young people to see, and it helps see how it works. And it was basically the same thing we had at Ordinance tonight. But anyways, other than that, I'm going to be going to Washington, but it'll be to see grandkids and cherry blossoms. So.
Awesome. Good. Thank you and enjoy. Mr. Walsh.
One item on April 8th, you folks will see the next contract that comes out of community development, and that's our set of contracts that we use to outsource building services, plumbing, electrical, and mechanical inspections. So that goes through a company called PCI, and the only change on that will be the dates as well. So those things will be in your packet, and we've asked people from PCI to be here to answer your questions. Another annual contract that we try to keep up on for you folks. And they've been doing very well again, so hopefully it'll go smooth. That'll be on April 8th. Thank you.
On that topic, real quick, for the newer commissioners, it may help as you're getting the information together. It's something that Frank has had the lead on over the last few years, and we have had resounding success with them, and really what I feel is a quantifiable ROI with that. So if you want, for the newer commissioners, don't hesitate to reach out to Frank in advance and get the background on things, so.
More than willing to answer your questions. Feel free to stop in too. We'll show you how the office works and, new staff that's been there for a while, how we're trying to modernize. So feel free to stop in. And the contract comes with budget information as well. So that'll be a good reference point for the relationship between these contracts and our budget.
Good, thank you. Daryl?
Just following up a little bit on what Commissioner Gilbert and Glenville talked about with the Laker line and the trails and all of that. Last week, Frank and Scott met out on site at the tunnel location, talking about the new station that's going to be there. And I think one of the items they talked about, even at that location, was some type of wayfinding sign to help direct people from the bus to the trail to the DDA. And that's been a project on the DDA's agenda too, is once the Laker line comes to fruition, is trying to get some more wayfinding signs in the DDA to direct people from the trail to the business to the parking areas and all that coming together. So I think you'll see more energy in that area now that the Laker line's beginning construction very soon. So it's exciting, kind of nice to see all those pieces come together. Also related to the project we had tonight for Visser's second reading on that, we're going to be starting the process for establishing a special assessment district for the city portion of that road that'll connect from the Visser project to the existing North Ridge Drive that runs off of Fruit Ridge. So over the next few months, you'll probably be seeing some resolutions regarding establishing a district and how we're going to pay for that or propose paying for it, whether it's through a bond or however. So that's trying to track in concert with what Visser is doing out there. So good to get those projects in sync with each other. Let's see, no, it'd be similar to like we did with Avistar a couple years ago, where we paid for it up front with a bond and then got reimbursed by the property owners as the sites developed.
So I guess up to this point on that, how will that road finance?
The existing, both ends, other than that missing link, are all financed privately by the developer, paid by developer as part of their project. This is the missing link, if you will, in between those two projects, from the Schwalier property and the consumer's property, where we precise platted that over the years.
So I guess my question is, why is the funding different?
Because this is not a developer project, this missing link in the middle, this is something that we want to see, I think, as the city, to get that connection through, so we have that connection from Walker to Fruit Ridge without that missing gap in the middle, that last missing gap.
More later. Thank you.
Yep. Also working on the gypsy moth notifications, so you'll probably be seeing those going out in the next week and a half to 2 weeks. Anticipate probably a late May, early June spraying, depending on how the spring goes and when our consultant says it's ready to go. So I think the report that they did last fall recommended spraying about 1,400 acres again this year, or 1,300. So we're working through that process. So I know a lot of the residents are excited about that. I think we've added one new neighborhood from in the past, and that's up behind Target and that neighborhood up there off of behind Green Ridge. So that area was hit pretty hard last year. And other than that, continuing to refine the budget, and I think that's it.
Good, thank you, Daryl. I'll get through these quick. Commissioner DeSham, I'm glad you brought up the reference check. I had a chance at MML to have a conversation with the mayor from St. John's, who is actively in process with the McKenna folks, and just a few-minute conversation, but he had extremely positive referral for them, just reaffirming what we know with them. So that is positive. For those able to attend the MML, it was neat to see the engagement from, the different breakout sessions. It's been talked about up here, the representation that we had there. It's one thing if you're in the meeting and attentively listening and engaged in things. It's another thing when you're out in the hallway, like some might be, and checking emails and phone calls and stuff. And I didn't see that with any of our commissioners. So I just wanted to applaud you on that. You were all very active in things. Just a reminder, when submitting expenses from that is to include the rest of the commissioners on. I have to do mine yet. When you sent it to Dan DeVries, just from the transparency, something we talked about well over a year ago, and staying on track with that. But, my takeaways, I think, from MML, really, they really came down to one thing, and it started Tuesday night with the presentation for the award for Rob Verheulen, and realizing the quality of people that not only we've had come from Walker and go on to additional things, but also the quality of people we have, leading the city. And when you look at, or some of the conversations having with peers from other cities and other elected officials and state representatives, we really, even sitting in the lobby and the 2.0 and stuff, and these other classes, I'm listening to stuff. It's like, we're already doing this. We've been doing this for years. So I just, again, that really falls upon staff, because elected officials come and go. Having that consistency and having really that leadership, that's just a constant is awesome. So Friday I met with Dan Hibma to discuss the Grand River Waterway project that he's been working on. I have an email packet queued up in my email I'll send when the meeting's done here. I didn't want to send it in advance because I didn't want to answer a bunch of questions, but basically Dan came in Friday and shared it as something that actually has it is a 22-mile, and I left the darn sheets on my desk, highlighted, but it's a 22-mile project. It starts at the Fulton Street Bridge and goes down all the way almost to Eastmanville, which, if you're coming from Lake Michigan, it comes to, there's an inlet area there where basically you can't come upriver any further. So the intent is you're able basically to come from Lake Michigan all the way into Grand Rapids and be able to navigate that with any type of boat, short of a cruise ship. So kind of a neat thing, but there involves a lot of dredging. When you go back to, I think it was around the 1910s, there was a lot of pilings and walls that were put in along the Grand River in an attempt to kind of contain the river and provide docking areas and what have you, and a lot of those are still there. So part of that dredging process that's taken place, there's been a considerable amount done. The state legislature has already appropriated the money for this to happen. So that money is actually there, and there's been studies and so forth. What is ongoing right now, the next steps are testing in different spots. So look for more on that. I'll share the packet. There's a great Facebook page they have and a website. You'll be able to get on that as well. So I'll send that when I get back to the meeting. Commissioner Gilbert and I attended the breakfast with legislators this morning at the Rapid hosted it. It was just I think we took advantage to shamelessly plug the city. We had the new director with MDOT there, and our local MDOT representation. Nothing that we haven't already said, but I think we took heavy advantage of the opportunity to have the ear of the people that control that funding. So that was good. And then I came back from that, met with our Kent County prosecutor, Chris Becker, in the office here. He shared some of the positive, inciting things he's doing really from a service and a proactive approach. I also have those packets scanned, and there's some flyers that he had brought along with. He's going to send more that we can share on our shelf here, as well as send some over to PD. There are things like the courthouse therapy dog. There's actually quite a few of those now that are in the system. I think there's 14, and there's no cost to them. People bring their dogs that have been trained, service dogs to a certain level, and they come for particularly the children and the adults that have some trauma that's taken place. So it's a neat program. He's going to be visiting with Judge Versluis on this, so we have to encourage Judge Versluis to take advantage of that. There's KEEP program, there's restorative justice, and then there's Y-Stop, youthful sex offender treatment program, ages 17 to 24. It's a growing demographic with challenges as it relates to that. So a lot of good programs, and it was nice to see him out here. He's trying to get to the cities. We were one of the early ones, and I realized the relationship that with him of the approachability, and then also our police department works extremely well with his office. So I think that was all that I had. And then lastly, calendar items. And I will send these out via calendar invites, so no action needed tonight. On May 13th at 5 o'clock, Commissioner Glanville had a great idea from a interaction at a sporting event or kids event, I believe.
Yeah, it was a design thinking showcase.
Design Thinking Showcase. She had met Matt Grossler, the IT director for the county, and Matt is oversees actually the dispatch authority board, and have gotten to know Matt over the last couple of years. Good guy. He's actually been around for quite a while at the county. So on May 13th, again, calendar item, I'll send out the invite. At 5 o'clock, we'll be meeting at Kent County for those that are able to make it and interested for a tour of the dispatch center. And until you've been in there and see the return on the investment we make in the technology as a city, and the employees we have, you'll hit the wow factor walking in there. So it's kind of a neat tour if you've not been in there before. And then the second last event, look for more of those field trip type of things to come up. Daryl and I were just speaking earlier about a waste to energy trip with Commissioner Stek. We'll get that for the summer months. We'll kind of mix these in with department leader presentations and keep this theme of education throughout for the commission and helping all of us do our jobs better. Last thing I have is on April 22nd, during our City Commission meeting that night after we have our emergency management planning, our tabletop exercise. We will actually have President Thomas J. Haas Day. There will be a mayoral proclamation for our outgoing president from Grand Valley. And kind of the why behind that is Grand Valley is a growing partner, particularly in the Standale area, with some property investment. They actually have 1.3, almost 1.4 million student rides that go through Standale per year. There's a number of Grand Valley graduates, number of current Grand Valley attendees, students, if you will, that are a part even of this commission up here. That university, and particularly President Haas, has been a strong advocate for the relationship with Walker, and I felt it was appropriate on his going out, the influence he's had, not just on the city, but even some of us up on this dais, and I see Commissioner Gilbert nodding, so he knows where I'm going there. So we'll have a little event for him. He's actually coming with his wife, Marcia, some of his family members, and I do expect a full house of Grand Valley students here that night, just putting that out there. So we'll get some people in the seats. So that'll take us maybe about we'll do that at the front end of the meeting, maybe a 10 to 15 minute presentation. So that is all I have. Thanks for enduring all of that. I'll entertain Daryl.
I forgot one thing that was on my other sheet. The state is in the process of updating their overall state transportation plan. Different from the gas tax, different from everything else. There's a survey that's out there. I will send you the link to that, so if you have the opportunity in the next week or so to fill out that link and respond to that. It's a pretty interactive type of a survey, but pretty short, but look for that coming on the next couple of days.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Good, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Everybody wants to get out of here. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. We have a motion from Commissioner Gilbert.